Drop it. All right, power panel. No coffee was hurt in the making of this intro. All right, Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Francesca Fiorentini.
Hi.
In the building.
Here I am.
Oh my God.
Who's on Skype right now?
Nobody. No. Isn't that weird?
We're all here?
What if there's another version of all of us, but on Skype?
Ooh.
That's a Stephen King novel.
Okay. By the way, we have got to raise my chair. All right.
No, anyways. I think we should leave it like this.
No, don't do it.
I think there's a cool Fellowship of the Ring thing going on here.
Well, John is actually taller than me in real life, so that's accurate. Okay, so we got a hell of a show for you guys today, including you guys. We're gonna need your help in figuring out what's the best attack at. Help2rebellion.com. So that's a fun segment later. All right, look, absolutely mental right wingers on the show today, and kind of hologram sex, kind of. What are we calling it? Fiction. Some sort of sex with fiction, okay? That's what's happening later in the program, apparently. So
people
all consensual.
Yes.
Know what that's about. Fictional sex.
Yeah, well, fictional sex.
Right wingers also know what that's about.
Fictional sex has been around for a long time. Anyways, but very serious news as well, of course, including Ukraine, where there is potentially a massive development. So. John, take it away.
Yep, there's nothing I like more than transition from the holographic sex to this.
Yeah, right.
We're now more than 2 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and obviously there's been a lot of devastation, basically all of it occurring within the geographic boundaries of Ukraine. But for some time, there's been an indication that perhaps it's moved across the border and into Russian territory. And most recently, there is some greater evidence that that might be happening. Now, to be clear, the Ukrainian leaders are not confirming or denying that some of these attacks, whether via shelling or missile strikes that are purported to be happening in Russian territory, have actually happened. They're not confirming, they're not denying. But they have apparently a senior advisor apparently described what was going on as karma, which is an odd way to put it. But anyway, it appears the Ukrainian troops are hitting the infrastructure, military targets, and potentially villages inside of Russia, which, like some of this again might be against military installations. For all of us who have, feared civilians being caught in the crossfire or intentionally targeted inside of Ukraine, there's fears that potentially Russian civilians could die in these strikes in Russian territory as well. And the numbers apparently are going up. At least 11 different attacks seem to have occurred since the beginning of the Russian invasion, and it's accelerating in the course of just the last week. There are also these suspicious explosions that have been happening in Russian military facilities near the border. You can see in this map, it's a pretty wide variety of different targets, mostly quite close to the Ukrainian border, but some significantly further in, making it a little bit hard to imagine that these are direct strikes, that it could be accidents that are being sort of conceptualized as being part of this, but might be truly separate. It might be sabotage going on. But it's difficult to know exactly what to make of all this. We do know that there was an apparent attack at a fuel depot some time ago within the last few weeks. Let us show you that footage in case you've forgotten what this was like.
Friday at first light, just beyond Ukraine's northern border with Russia, firefighters tackling a blaze at a fuel depot in the Russian city of Belgorod. The governor there has accused Ukraine of sending helicopters to attack the oil storage tanks under the cover of darkness. Security camera and other footage on social media seems to confirm some kind of attack by helicopters and the firing of missiles. If the Russian claims are true, this will be the first attack by Ukrainian forces on Russian soil since the war began. Ukraine's foreign minister said he could neither confirm nor deny responsibility, but the Kremlin says the suspected airstrike doesn't help the prospect of ongoing peace talks.
Now, of course, that was several weeks ago. And it's certainly, like when you think back to the beginning of the invasion, the Russians felt fairly certain, and it seemed plausible that they would establish almost instantaneous air superiority over the entirety of Ukraine. When they're flying helicopters at least somewhat deep in your own territory, that's about as far from air superiority as we can imagine. The most recent attacks, of course, don't appear to have been done via helicopters. We also know that the US has sent over a lot of military equipment, including howitzers, that in theory could be used in these sorts of attacks outside of Ukraine's territory. And we know that Russia's been becoming increasingly frustrated with the aid that's being provided. If those weapons are implicated in attacks inside of Russia, one can imagine that they would be even more furious.
Yeah, so this has got really mixed news. So first of all, karma, I agree with it. There was a propagandist reporter on the scene in when some of apparently the bombs were dropping. And she was in a panic, and she's like, "Oh my God, this is totally unexpected. I can't believe this is happening." Why can't you believe it's happening? You invaded them. You started a war with them. Why wouldn't they have a right to attack you back? But that's the thing with bullies. Like, they always love to punch you, and they've punched Ukraine now thousands of times, killed endless number of people. The minute you punch them a little bit back, they're like, "Oh my God, this is not fair. This is what the hell, they're killing Russians." Yeah, you're murdering Ukrainians every single day. What part of that is hard to understand? So like the Russian shock and disbelief, can you believe the Ukrainians are fighting back? Yeah, I could definitely believe it. That's what I would do. Now, having said that, we have to be extraordinarily careful here, or in this case, the Ukrainians have to be extraordinarily careful. The reason is, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. I think the Ukrainians are right. If my country was invaded, I wouldn't care anything about etiquette. I wouldn't care, would I attack back? Of course I would, right? And I wouldn't care about, oh my God, they hit a fuel depot. Goddamn right we did. Those are the weapons you're bringing in. That's the fuel you're bringing in to invade and murder my citizens. I've got no qualms about that on a moral level. The reason we have to be careful is, inside the country, they only have state-controlled media, and they've already stoked them up to be super angry and pretend that the Ukrainians are the aggressors and the Nazis and all this stuff. And unfortunately, the Russian people believe it. It's the only thing they're seeing. So now when they see this, it's gonna be so easy to say to them, "Can you believe it? The Nazis are almost here." Now for us, that sounds insane, absurd, because we know it's not anywhere near true. But the Russian people don't know that. And if you want a good example of how you could have mass delusion in a country, we had it right here. 7 out of 10 Americans thought that Saddam Hussein had attacked us personally on 9/11. Why? Our media brainwashed our citizens into thinking that Iraq attacked us, when it had not attacked us at all. That's why 7 out of 10 Americans were totally misled by our mainstream media. Now, what do you think is happening with state-controlled media? Now, our mainstream media is a little bit more sophisticated in how they do propaganda, right? But at the end of the day, 70% of 70%, and in Russia, it's a little bit higher than 70% right now. So now you got folks talking about, we should strike back with nukes. So we're getting into super dangerous territory now.
Yeah, and just on the attacks themselves, one, they seem to be strategic attacks. These are not the same types of attacks that we saw in Bucha in Ukraine, indiscriminate killing of unarmed civilians, mass rape, those kinds of things. This seems to be a strategic attack, if in fact it was Ukraine backed by the United States and others, which I would be surprised if they claim control over this. Take responsibility over this, because you can see why they would want to. Yes, that was us, Zelensky saying, absolutely, we did it, and you better expect more. But also, you gotta wonder, Putin obviously has a million screws loose, and nobody knows what he's gonna do next. So why would you wanna take responsibility for it if you know maybe they're going to escalate to the next level? So far, there doesn't seem to be intelligence to say that they're going to mobilize any nukes, but who knows? So yeah, I keep on thinking about the fact that Cenk is absolutely right. This is a neighboring country. What Russia helped Assad do in Syria was not a neighboring country. The backlash to that was not the death of Russians, was not attacks on Russian soil. Now that it is, imagine if the United States invaded Mexico and suddenly there was a skirmish on that border. We would freak out. But of course, when it happens in the Middle East or it happens in Afghanistan, that's over there.
Yeah, I just want to say one quick thing about that because Franny's exactly right. In Iraq, we attacked Iraq with no justification. They had no weapons of mass destruction, and they had not attacked us on 9/11. They were actually an enemy of Al Qaeda. So if did Iraq have every right to attack us back? Yes. But if they had, I don't know if we would have nuked them, but it's certainly possible. And we would have then attacked Iran and Syria and Jordan and every other country there is, because Americans would have been in a rage. How dare they fight back? I get, you know it. Every one of you knows it if you're on the left or the right. If after we attacked Iraq, Saddam Hussein had somehow hit an American city and killed hundreds of people, we would have murdered everybody in Iraq. We almost murdered everybody in Iraq as it was, right? And so don't be surprised if the Russians do likewise. That's why we're in super dangerous territory.
Yeah, and there's a ton of considerations. Assuming that this is the Ukrainians, assuming that we're going to see more of this, they do need to be very careful because of course there are strategic reasons why you would want to be conducting these attacks. First of all, logistically, there's the preparation of the Russian forces. They are being supplied from some of these facilities. Weapons are being stored there. You'd want to attack them where, as of right now, at least they're not being as well defended. At the same time though, if they start killing a significant number of civilians, or if Russian media can make it look like they're killing a significant number of civilians, then that not only is morally and ethically wrong, but it also would very, I think, quickly work to undercut the position of moral superiority that the Ukrainians have in this conflict. They have been widely accepted by the vast majority of the world as the victims in this. It would then start to muddy the waters a little bit on that.
But only inside of Russia, in my opinion.
Maybe.
One thing that Ukraine has going for it that Syria sadly did not was that the misinformation worked so well in that war, whereas in this war, that misinformation can only sort of really work on the Russian people inside the country. Whereas we just heard Putin this week say like, I didn't expect people to support Ukraine. Like actually some of us didn't either, given how we support a lot of countries that are under attack. But anyway,
Yeah, and some Fox hosts are still trying to figure out exactly how to message around that. And there's strategic concerns too. Ukraine is receiving a good number of weapons and the training to use them, but they also have a significant number of Russian soldiers in their own territory. Cities are besieged right now. Can they necessarily afford to be conducting all of these strikes hundreds, thousands of miles away? Not necessarily, but at the same time, the Russians right now are able to send the vast majority of their forces in without worrying about strikes against their back lines, forcing them to spread out their defenses a little bit, especially in terms of air defenses. That could be valuable for the Ukrainians. So there's a lot of, I think, moral communication as well as strategic concerns. But in terms of the reaction of right-wingers, there was one quote that I definitely wanted to read. This is coming from the editor of Russia Today, Margarita Simonyan, who tweeted it just yesterday. And she tweeted, "The Anglo-Saxons publicly recommend that Ukraine move hostilities onto Russian territory and supply it with the means to implement this plan. What choice are you giving us, idiots? Complete destruction of the remaining Ukraine? Nuclear strike?" First of all, what Anglo-Saxons are saying that is where the fight should be, and that's great. But anyway, this is the same woman who was joking around, chuckling about nuclear strikes against New York City just a couple of days ago, the editor of Russia Today. She thinks it's hilarious. By the way, if nuclear apocalypse happened, they were joking that, well, at least we'd all get to go to heaven. So that's good. I would also say you need to expand your thought process there. What alternatives do we have? The complete destruction of Ukraine, nuclear strike. How about withdrawing? How about that? How about you end the war that you all started that doesn't need to continue for a minute longer than you choose to continue it? How about that?
Yeah, look guys, I'm so conflicted on it because I know that if my country was attacked and civilians were killed, family members were killed, I'd see red and I wouldn't give a damn who we're bombing in Russia. Oh, Crimea River. Oh, have you been bombed? Oh, I should care. When I'm bombed, you shouldn't care. But when you're bombed, I should care? No deal. No deal at all. Now, that's how I would feel emotionally. But yes, of course, John is right that Ukrainians have to be very, very careful about hitting military targets and not civilian targets, because hitting Russian civilians doesn't make you any better, okay? And that is a war crime and you shouldn't do it. And all it's gonna do is unfortunately unleash propagandists like the one that John quoted, who's gonna then say, kill all the Ukrainians. And that's not gonna help anybody. Now, the last part of it is, guys, we keep assuming that when the Russians saying that they're considering using nukes, Putin has hinted at it several times. His paid propagandists on TV, which he clearly speaks to, have now threatened it multiple times. And we keep assuming, oh, well, they're not really gonna do that. We also thought they wouldn't really invade Ukraine. So I think we're underestimating the threat of nuclear holocaust. And that is where we are.
Strangely, US intelligence was right about this war.
Yeah.
Maybe the last thing that they've been right about was the war.
Maybe the first.
Maybe the first. The last thing in a while. I don't know. When were they ever right? But anyway, so if they're not sounding the alarms, I'm a little bit like heartened, I guess.
But you know what? They might not be sounding the alarms because they don't want people to panic and make the situation worse.
Sure.
So you look,
Trump's playbook.
No one who's watched TYT in the last 20 years thinks we're soft on US intelligence. They've bungled things endlessly. They're liars, on. And we've called out their propaganda before and more thoroughly than anyone has. But they got Ukraine right in the beginning. They said that a number of things we were skeptical about, and it turns out they were correct. So we do a news program, we report facts. Now, that's an interesting data point that they have not sounded any alarms on the nukes, but if they were concerned about the nukes and I was them, I wouldn't sound any alarms either. I'm pretty sure that would make it worse. So, and guys, yeah, okay, we could all worry, but at the same time, I love giving constructive solutions. And there really isn't one here. I mean, you can't be like, oh, the Russians are threatening nuclear war, so let's just let them take any country they like. No, you can't do that. On the other hand, we have to be measured in how we fight back. We don't have a choice. Because he is crazy. I mean, he believes this Russian philosopher that's just absolutely nuts and thinks that progress is bad and that we should go back to the medieval ages. That is literally his Dugin's philosophy, and his two biggest fans are Vladimir Putin and Steve Bannon. And I'm not at all joking. By the way, third guy who might be a huge fan is Tucker Carlson. So that's the insane world we live in today.
Super final question in terms of how we respond. I mean, one area where we could respond that they've been asking us to, the Russians, is stop sending weapons. And so obviously we've been, watching and critiquing every step along the way from before the conflict. What signals is Biden sending? What are they saying? And more importantly, what are they doing? And so we've evaluated now several rounds of aid, either direct economic aid or weapons shipments. Recently, as I said, there were armored vehicles, helicopters, long-range artillery. I was reading that Biden is apparently considering invoking the Defense Production Act to produce more javelins because we are sending more than can be produced. Russia is saying you can't do that. They're considering that basically us declaring war on Russia. And especially if some of those weapons were being used outside of the context of Ukraine, do you start to worry that they either might have a point or might at least convince themselves that they have a point and respond accordingly?
Look, these are super hard questions. Number one, you've got to get actual media inside Russia. And I don't know how in the world you do that, because you need the Russian people to turn against Putin. And they're not gonna do that if they think the Nazis are invading and are going to kill all the Russians. I mean, that sounds absurd to us, but yeah, about 90% of Russia actually believes that Putin is defending them against imminent invasion by Nazis, right? And they think it's back to World War II and their only protector is Vladimir Putin. If we can't get them any real information, well, then if he's got the support of 80, 90% of Russians, he's not gonna turn around. And if he loses face, that is devastating to him. So there are no good answers here. Either you concede to him, but then if you concede to him, not only does he take Ukraine, which is a massive, massive, unbearable injustice, but then he's got no reason not to take the next country and the one after that, because you've already conceded to him. You cannot do that. On the other hand, if you beat him, look, and the Ukrainians look like they're halfway towards beating him, in terms of getting him at least to retreat to the eastern part of Ukraine, well, then you've cornered a madman. And he keeps telling you he's going to use nukes. I don't know. Obviously you've got to hope against all hope that it's not against all hope. I mean, he likely won't do it, right? I don't want you to panic, but there is some percentage chance now. There is some percentage chance, and you've got to hope he doesn't push the button, because if he does, we will, and we'll all be dead.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts. I just feel like this begins so much, the timeline is so much longer than just this war, on all of the steps that the United States could have implemented in terms of diplomacy, ways that they could have taken Putin more seriously during all kinds of invasions, Crimea being one of them, and like the real sanctions, not just sort of the ones, like how many rounds of sanctions? Why weren't we doing this before? So like, it's very hard for me now to be like, to know exactly what to do, because we got ourselves into this mess in some ways. And I do think that we should be supporting the Ukrainian government with weapons. I'm glad there's a government to support, and it happens to be one that isn't, I don't know, murdering journalists, unlike other governments we tend to support, or rebels that we just sort of willy-nilly, like Libya, just give them everything, don't know what happens. Oh, it's just gonna sort of decay into different like warlords, tight. Like we don't want that, obviously. So like, what's the plan then to bring them back? I think is also another question when this ends.
Super duper last thing. Look, I think the best strategy is the one that Biden is actually doing. That's why I've given him credit on this. Putting pressure on the oligarchs, because those are the only people who can have any prayer of overruling Putin, however they do it. And so they seize the yachts, and you think, what's the big deal? But remember, they think those yachts are their penises. So you took that away from them, and the oligarchs were super mad. And now we're selling them off. And they're like, wait, I thought you were just seizing them. You're gonna sell them? But that way, no, I spent $150 million on that yacht. And so, and then there's a couple other financial things that we've done recently where you could tell we're turning the vice on the oligarchs, and you could tell from the squeals of Putin. Every time we do some sort of economic sanction that hits the oligarchs, you hear Putin squeal and then say, oh, I have nukes, don't you dare take one more yacht, okay? Because what do rich, powerful people care about? Themselves, period.
Yeah.
So you have to hurt those oligarchs to a maximum degree until they say to Putin, we're done with this, however they say it. That's our best hope.
Take away their bunga bunga.
Yeah.
Don't ever Google that.
They're gonna know.
Okay.
First break?
Yeah, first break. When we come back, a lot more where this came from. We'll be right here. Back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Francesca with you guys. John, more news.
Okay, there is in fact.
Here we go.
I'm ready to go whenever. Do we not have a thing? Do we not? Okay, I'll just start. Okay, no, I can do it either way. Anyway, Elon Musk cruised into this whole acquiring Twitter thing with the veneer of independence. People didn't think of him as a left-winger or a right-winger, even though if they looked into his history of trying to crush unions and dox journalists, they might have had an idea. That's all gone now. Everybody knows that he loves the right wing, and more importantly, he desperately wants them to like him. So he's been tweeting out all of these memes designed to appeal to them, feeding into the narratives that they believe. Along the way though, he's made some claims that while vague, hint at specifics, and that's where we're gonna have to do a bit of debunking in this.
You didn't see Republicans, when we had control of the Senate, try to rig the game.
Shows how the Green New Deal would be a deadly deal for the United States of America.
Our systems are not racist.
Okay, yes, we are now in the debunker, and we're gonna get to the tweet I was referencing in 1 sec. Along the way though, we gotta just touch base with a few things. One is this tweet: a social media platform's policies are good if the most extreme 10% on left and right are equally unhappy. Which is what you would get if you took like a really dim chat AI bot and got it to produce both sidesism after about 10 minutes of thinking. It's so stupidly shallow. And that's the wealthiest guy in the history of the world. He goes on to say though, I strongly supported Obama for president, but today's Democratic Party has been hijacked by extremists, which is a claim. As many people have pointed out, like he was like totally down for Obama. That's when the Democrats were reasonable. Now they're extremists, even though the president is Obama's VP. Like 3 out of the 4 of the top Democrats in the House and the Senate are literally the same exact animated skeletons that they were back in 2008. But yeah, no, and along the way, the right, by the way, has gone through the Tea Party and QAnon, and they tried to overthrow democracy, but it is the Democrats that are extreme. That's not the thing we need to debunk, but I think it's worthy of giving you guys a chance to weigh in.
Okay, really quickly, Biden, who was chosen because he was more conservative than Obama, because he was like the sort of like old-timey white man face they could put on the Obama administration. That's all I had to say. And now we're more extreme, okay.
Yeah, no, the right believes a caricature of the left, and Elon Musk is apparently getting his news from right-wing media and social media where everything is amplified. So they will take either something completely made up or find one rando and pretend it's the Democratic Party, right? And so they genuinely believe that that is what the Democratic Party is doing. The reality is the Democratic Party is doing pretty much nothing, right? They're not doing any of the progressive policies we wanted, let alone just centrist Democratic policies. They're not doing anything. They can't pass a goddamn thing. And they're the weakest people on earth. You gotta, look, you could, do we think you should criticize the Democratic Party? Hell yeah, have you ever watched the Young Turks, right? But the idea that they're too strong and bullying the right, I don't know, man, maybe if you're on a different planet. But that planet exists, it's called right-wing media.
Yeah, exactly, and it's wrong in 2 very fundamental ways. One, as you point out, the idea that the Democrats are doing a lot when they're not, but also that the Democrats that are in charge are the left is nonsense. So what they're doing is nonsense, it's made up. Who they are is nonsense, it's made up. No one on the right seems to have any idea of who is actually on the left. And that is because for decades, their default position has been calling literally anyone to the left of Sean Hannity a communist. So it all gets collapsed down to one point, so they have no idea what they're talking about. In the case of Elon Musk, I don't know which it is. Is he dumb enough to believe the things he's tweeting, or is he just a right-wing liar? Does he not actually believe it, but it's convenient and he knows he'll get a lot of retweets if he tweets stuff like this? And you might think, well, he's got hundreds of billions of dollars. How could he be possibly motivated just by getting retweets? Have you ever looked into Elon Musk? Do you understand the person that he is? That is really the thing that's driving him. But here is the tweet that we need to debunk, and that is this obviously intentionally cartoonish, childish thing. This is the thing in our culture where Elon Musk takes a meme someone made and it's like purposefully like a kid would do, and that somehow owns everyone. I don't understand how it works, but the idea being that he has been left of center since 2008, but progressives have gradually gone lefter and lefter. He hasn't moved, the right hasn't moved, he's the same, and so now the center is to the left of him. Again, what exactly the bona fides he has as having been left of center back in 2008, I have no idea whatsoever. But anyway, the idea is that it's the left that has changed. Now, we're gonna waste a couple of minutes together by trying to get through to them, starting with facts, which is the weakest weapon to use in modern political discourse. So for instance, if you, I just have like a fun nostalgia for it. It's like making quiche for Christmas. It doesn't really fit with the modern world, but I grew up on it, so I'm gonna go with it. So if you take a look at this, it's a reference to Pew Research had done a statistical analysis of basically every vote over the course of years and years on the Senate side and the House side, broken down by Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats, I understand that the text is probably too small for you to see, on the Senate side are in this measure 0.06% more to the left than they were at the beginning of the study, whereas Republicans are 0.28 more to the right. And basically the same exact thing, slightly stronger, is happening on the House side. So in terms of actual votes on actual policy, it is not only objectively untrue that the Democrats have moved much to the left at all, but he's also masking the fact that the right has become far more radical. But we've been covering news, many of you have been watching it. You don't need a statistical analysis of Senate votes to know that since 2008 in particular, you've had the Tea Party and the Freedom Caucus and the rise of QAnon and Trumpism and the turn against democracy. Why do we need to make the case that the right are the ones who become more radical?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to break this down. First of all, Elon Musk keeps insisting that he's somewhere in the middle, right? And that in fact, he was center left just a decade ago, right? I've literally never heard him say one left-wing thing. Not one, right? So now Rogan, for example, used to do things that were left-wing populist and right-wing populist. Over the last 2 years, he hasn't said one thing that was left-wing. He hasn't said one thing that's pissed off his right-wing audience. Elon Musk, same thing, hasn't said one thing that's pissed off his right-wing audience, has said dozens, if not hundreds of things that the right-wing audience loves and is Looney Tunes, right? They're getting captured by their own fans. They're so obsessed with their vanity.
Yeah.
And they know that if they say anything left-wing, their fans will turn on them. The zombies will turn on their creators. And so it's a fiction, it's a fantasy. And by the way, I challenged him on Twitter, that's hilarious, he's not gonna respond to me. But I'll tell you guys right now, you can challenge him, it doesn't matter. I said, okay, then prove it. Say one thing against the right wing. Because you keep saying, oh, I don't like the far right either. Okay, then name one thing they're doing wrong. Never, not once. The whole thing is propaganda. He's never been left wing, he's not left wing, he's never been center left. But more importantly, he's, to John's point, it's a childish view of American politics. Look, the right wing got so insanely right wing, they dragged the Democratic Party to the right with them. Reagan did amnesty. Flat out amnesty, not pretend amnesty. Hey, every illegal immigrant in the country, you're now welcome to stay here. Okay, he negotiated with terrorists. He ran from Lebanon. He raised taxes 11 times. I can go on and on. I did a segment about this on MSNBC a decade ago, okay? Where Reagan's positions at that time he would have gotten kicked out of a Democratic primary for being too liberal. Okay, that's how much the Overton window has moved to the right in this country. Not in terms of the American people. I could show you polling that shows you definitively that the American people are progressive. But Washington has become maniacally right wing. And I did that segment 10 years ago. Now, since then, Tea Party, QAnon, 23% of Republicans believe that the Democrats are led by a satanic cult that is kidnapping children, leading a pedophile ring, and drinking their blood. I'm not joking. 23% of the Republican Party believes that. That is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. One side has lost their frickin' mind. The other side says, hey, can we get healthcare for everybody like every other developed nation? Can we get a livable wage? We want higher wages and more healthcare for everybody. And we're nuts? No. Elon Musk, either you're a gigantic liar or your intellect is that of a child.
Well, yeah, both of those things I think can be true, Cenk, but I think your very first point was right on. Elon Musk is a severely online billionaire. Everything else about him trickles down from that. This is someone who just finds a tweet of like a trans person being like, hey, I'm so happy I got chest surgery, man. I'm really living in the body that I wanna live. And it'd be great if the government could cover this cost, because it cost me thousands of dollars. And it's like, oh my God, you living your life and like being who you wanna be is crushing my soul. Is it raising your tax rate? No, not yet, sadly. I wish that the LGBTQ plus community could magically do that to you, but we can't. But so it's just like insane that like if you spend all your time online and you get mad and you talk to right wingers and they're like, well, this person wants to do that and that person has a kitty litter and that person is like, hey, quick question. Did you read that online? Yeah. That's not true. None of that's true. So why don't you close your laptop? Why don't you stop looking at Twitter? Why don't you stop with the outrage and actually go out and talk to people? And you'll realize that none of this far left stuff or the things that you think are far left are reality whatsoever. So that's exactly what he's doing here. And it's really sad. I mean, what, 2012, Obama's reelected? That's when we got a giant shift to the left. Re-electing Obama? What the hell, like that? Cool, the same guy for 4 years. Yeah, no, I definitely see that.
But I partly see what he's saying about Obama. Obama was a friend to the bankers and to the billionaires. And he was a corporate Democrat extraordinaire. So people like Elon Musk was like, oh, this guy's never gonna touch me. This is perfect. It looks like he's doing something, but he's doing nothing. And I'm getting away with anything I want. Now, it's still the same thing. Biden's the same exact thing as Obama, maybe even worse. But there's now a wing of the Democratic Party that says, hey, maybe we should tax the rich. Now, we haven't yet. He's still paying almost no taxes. He's getting loans based on his stock and avoiding taxes altogether. But he's like, oh my God, Democrats at some point might raise my taxes to $1. So extreme. Bring back Obama and the fake Democrats who were basically Republicans. And he's not overly wrong about that. Obama and Romney in that 2012 election was basically the same exact person. So he was thrilled either way. They were both serving the rich.
And he's doing the exact same thing. I know people wanna give him some sort of magical, no, but he's got a Cybertruck and he's into crypto. No, it's the same thing that all rich Republicans do. They give you this imaginary idea of what the left is, and they can't point to anything. Once again, they're pointing to randos on Twitter, a random person they hearsay heard about. Every single day on TYT, we talk about how like Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that a space laser was funded by the Rothschilds is like beaming, I don't know, whatever, CRT into our hearts. Like every day we talk about the math books that are being banned. Every day we talk about the conspiracy theories. We have proof. Where is the proof that the left is so crazy? And if you say defund the police, my God, I'm gonna strangle you. It is not at all crazy. It is not at all left. And we're gonna talk about how far right this country's gone when it comes to the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and it also didn't happen. They love to just take that and pretend like it's like Abbott.
Where did the police get defunded?
It's like Abbott talking about how the Green New Deal wrecked the power grid in Texas.
The idea of it, though.
Yeah.
Ideas are strong.
But why tell the truth when a lie is more effective and your base is never going to check it either way? Why don't we move on to the next block because we're starting to move into that territory of the CRT talk anyway. Starting off with this.
No politician has been as effective at waging today's culture wars as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He didn't initiate the culture war. You guys did. Who initiates the culture war matters. If you punch me and then I punch you back, I didn't initiate the fight. You initiated the fight. And if
Okay, so yeah, that's totally what he would do. He wouldn't run away screaming. But anyway, look, this is all about presenting themselves as victims. They have made a very conscious decision politically that once again they need to bamboozle their base. Their base, who is hurting economically in many cases and could desperately use help, would want it. They don't want to provide it. They certainly don't want to raise taxes to pay for any sort of help. So they need to come up with something that's going to take the space in the political discourse. They've decided that once again attacking the LGBTQ community is the way that you do that. And thus we're now multiple years into ongoing attacks against the trans community, nonstop conversation about trans athletes and kitty litter boxes and gender conversations and all that. That's what they're choosing to do. That's obviously pathetic, and they don't want their con to be identified, so they have to present themselves as doing it reflexively. It's the same as with Trump. He never punched anything, he always counterpunched. But Shapiro is gonna go way further than just DeSantis and the decision they made to scapegoat Disney. Take a look at this.
But again, the left has to portray the Republicans as the aggressors here. There's not a single social issue in America where Republicans are the aggressor over the course of the last 30 years. Not one. This country has been moving progressively to the left on social issues for decades on end. You cannot name a social issue on which the American governmental structure has moved to the right. It does not exist. It doesn't. I challenge anybody on the left to bring me one issue where the governmental structure of the United States, the legislative structure of the United States, has moved to the right over the course of the last 30 years. The only case you can make is in some states on abortion, and that's only because there was an artificial quash on abortion law put in place in 1973 by the Supreme Court in Roe. Every other issue, literally all of them, we have moved to the left, every single one.
So I love the idea of an artificial quash, which is, of course, the fact that you have a constitutional right to your reproductive freedom. That's what you have. That's an artificial quash. He has to call it that because they want to overturn decades of Supreme Court precedent, and he doesn't want to admit to his audience that that's what he's doing. Well, he challenged us. And I think that we can provide a few. Now, we're not gonna talk about any of the economic policy, how the federal government has gone through multiple rounds of trillions of dollars of tax cuts almost exclusively for the 1% and corporations. We could do that on any number of topics that have to do with economics, but he specifically was talking about culture, the culture war, and that sort of thing. So I'm just gonna throw out a few, I'm sure you can supplement it. Alabama lawmakers advance transgender students bathroom ban. We just plucked that specific one. Obviously, many different states have done this sort of thing, made campaigns and passed legislation specifically having to do with who gets to go into what bathroom based on anti-trans panic that right-wing pundits like Ben Shapiro had generated.
But they started it by having to pee.
That's true. Okay, that one doesn't count. That one doesn't count.
Yeah.
Trump decided to just preemptively ban transgender people from the US military. And Tucker Carlson wants to go farther than that. He's been, of course, demonizing for years women in the military, especially pregnant women in the military. Now, they haven't banned that yet, but they're setting the stage for the next Republican president. Let's see, there's been multiple book bannings, books having to do with race, with LGBTQ issues. Ben, how many hundreds of books need to be banned before that's an aggressive move in the culture war? Because there's thousands, 1,600 just in Texas, actually. That is against free speech. That's cancel culture, and it's certainly an aggressive move on the culture war. Does any of that count? And of course, he admitted that, okay, maybe we've done a little bit on the whole abortion thing. Well, yes, they very much have. Oklahoma, of course, recently is passing a 6-week abortion ban. Ohio is debating a bill literally as we speak, a trigger law for if the Supreme Court ever overturns Roe v. Wade that would outlaw it entirely except to save the life of the mom. So no provisions for incest or rape or anything like that. They are as radical as anything you can imagine, and that's just us getting started.
Yeah. No, that lie was so big and outrageous that it was like he said, there is no such thing as oxygen. We don't actually breathe. Counterpoint. How do I counterpoint that? Here's me breathing. All right, so first of all, you should also know his purpose here. The whole point of the culture wars started by the right wing is to distract you from economic issues. Because there was one piece of massive legislation, actually several pieces of massive legislation passed in the Trump and Biden era. $2 trillion of tax cuts for the rich. That's all of Ben Shapiro's friends. He doesn't want you to focus on that. By the way, then both the Treasury and the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars and handed it to the bankers and the largest corporations in the world during COVID relief. He doesn't want you to focus on that. That's the robbery. Now, let's talk about the distraction, okay? So in this case, the right wing hasn't started any culture wars. War on Christmas? Did the left start the war on Christmas?
Yeah, Starbucks did.
Yeah,
they're big old lefties.
But
look at how they're embracing their unions.
Franny, I swear to God they think that. They're like, well, they started it because we were forcing the Jews to say Merry Christmas, and they stopped. And now they're all of a sudden happy holidays, like other people can have holidays. God damn it, say our religion, our religion. You started the culture war. What? What are you talking about? There's no war on Christmas. You guys are lunatics. Okay, and to your point about Starbucks, Tucker Carlson did a segment. He said if Biden wins, they're gonna force you to drink Starbucks coffee every day. Now, is that true? Of course it's not true. Nothing they say is true. He started a culture war on testicle tanning. Okay, he's they're taking away the testosterone from men. You need to tan your testicles. These are the lunatics we're debating with. How do you debate a testicle tanner? Okay, and then critical race theory taught by no one in high schools. They're like, maybe in one Virginia county it was once taught. It's mainly a graduate level course, but maybe in one. So wait, one county is a massive issue you had to fight back against? Or were you motivating your base on the issue of race?
Yes.
Because you know what your base wants. They want that culture war fodder. Trans bathrooms. Let's say that you think, it is outrageous for the trans people to go into the correct bathroom. They should go into the one that they don't belong. Whatever you think. Trans girls on high school track teams, right? Do you think that's some of the largest issues in America? Or do you think that's a 0.0000001% issue in America, even if you thought it was a problem? Do you think what's more relevant, giving trillions of dollars to the richest people in the world, or a trans person going into what you consider the wrong bathroom, 3 times out of a country of 330 million people? It's so obvious that they're distracting you. Wake up.
Yeah, no, and they inflate it so much, and there is no evidence. It's just like the 2020 election over and over and over again. And some of us are interested. Oh wow, they're pivoting to CRT, they're pivoting to anti-trans stuff, and really doubling down on it. And it's all a figment of their imagination because they thrive on imagination. And sometimes I think to myself, do we do that, man? Do we make this boogeyman in our minds, and do we overhype the right? And then you see what they do, and you see them on January 6th, you're like, oh no, we got it right. Mainstream media got it wrong, but we were sounding the alarms on how these fascists were working. Last thing I'll say is, is Ben really wants to challenge the left to these debates about whether this country has moved farther to the right or to the left? Look at the criminal justice system. 2 million people inside and outside of the prison industrial complex, the massive expanse. Ask brown and black Americans how far left this country has gone. Now you have a Democratic president that's hardly done anything when it comes to reform. My God, the war on drugs, hello.
Yeah.
Just tangibly, it's so wrong. Obviously we have to focus on what actually has happened, but this country's moved so far to the right that yes, when you say, hey, I'd like to drink clean water, people are like, oh wow, commie.
You're woke. Yeah, and look, even just restricting ourselves to the thing, there's so much obviously that they say and try to push for, whether it's the media or the candidates. You're not gonna get a high profile Republican presidential nominee who will admit on stage that they accept evolution, for instance. Just forget about it, it's not gonna happen. Every single one of them will compete with each other about which federal departments they wanna literally shut down, whether it's the EPA or if it's interior or education. Where they do, Nixon set up the EPA, now they all pledged to destroy it. So again, rightward shift, that's in government.
Yes.
Stand your ground legislation in states across the country, gun control generally.
Yep.
The insane arguments about constitutional carry and everything like that, that's in the last 30 years, obviously. Endless waves of voter suppression legislation, that's continually happening in the last 30 years. And by the way, a lot of this culture war stuff, we use the word war sort of loosely, and that doesn't generally have a body count. Now, sure it can, hypothetically, when they're demonizing the Trevor Project, will that plausibly result in some more LGBTQ teens committing suicide? Sure, and that blood is on their hands. But what about during the pandemic? There's a culture war for you.
Yeah.
They were in charge in states and in the country. Hundreds of thousands of people needlessly died because of their propaganda. And that was in the last 30 years, Ben, I looked it up.
Yeah, look, I'll give you one last small example because those are devastating examples and it affected the life of hundreds of thousands of Americans and pushed to an insane, look, then there's an insane election conspiracy. Not one piece of evidence of fraud, yet over 60% of Republicans still believe it. They've lost their minds. There are actual facts in the world. And so, okay, so the small example. Remember the Dr. Seuss nonsense? The right wing started a cultural war on Dr. Seuss books. They would say, no, you guys did, because the Biden made Dr. Seuss stop printing the books that were politically incorrect.
The Biden.
But except they didn't. Dr. Seuss's family made a random decision regarding their business because those books were not selling because they were outdated. They had things in there that were offensive and people weren't buying it. They made a very normal capitalist decision within the family. And the right wing took that and pretended the left did it, Democrats did it, and that it was a law. None of that is true. You can look it up. There are still facts in the world. So why did they choose that issue to very specifically and purposely lie about? Because they wanted to create a culture war. Oh, remember the good old days when you used to read Dr. Seuss books? These commie left wingers don't even want you to read Cat in the Hat. That's not in one of the books, and it's not us, it was his own family. Oh, I can't believe it. Yeah, look at this, the Grinch that stole Christmas. They're stealing the Grinch that stole Christmas. It's a double steal, right? And so, yes, it's true, one side lies all of the time. And it's not to say that everybody else is innocent. Mainstream media has its own lies. And we've talked a lot about those. But don't pin that on the left. We don't like the mainstream media any more than you do. Yeah. And so the idea that the mainstream media is liberal, especially on economic issues, is hilarious. But if a conservative hears this, their head will explode. Yeah. No, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, my whole life have been telling me the media is liberal, it's gotta be liberal. Really? They loved all the tax cuts for the rich. They loved all the wars that got all the money to the defense contractors, the oil companies, the bankers. They love everything that helps the rich. That's not what progressives are for. Progressives are for universal health care, so you have health care, your kids have health care. We're for higher wages, not for bankers, but for you. When is the last time you ever saw Ben Shapiro talking about how you should have higher wages?
Yeah.
Never, because he lies on behalf of the rich, and in fact, he's paid to lie on behalf of the rich.
100%.
All right, we've got to go. We'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Francesca with you guys. Tons of love out here for John and Francesca. I unfortunately can't read all the comments, but I will read this one fun one from Super Chat. Jeremy Justice wrote in, TYT army is full of Frantifa super soldiers riding dragons into the greatest political battle of our lifetimes. We ride at dawn, my friends. Okay, love it. And I love that it's Jeremy Justice. Okay, all right, which brings us to the next story. All right. Now, there's a very important race going on in Ohio's 11th district. That's Cleveland. It's Nina Turner, progressive hero, versus Shontel Brown, corporate hero. Shontel Brown has gotten millions of dollars in donations in the last race and this race. Her number one donors, it just happens to be, it's different in each race, but in this case, it is pro-Israel PACs. They are literally classified as that. The largest one is called Democratic Majority for Israel, but it's also funded by oil executives, okay? She's also taking money from drug companies. So it is, corporate Democrat corruption 101. So Rebellion PAC, PAC that I formed, decided to fight back, okay? And we made a series of ads. Now here comes the fun part. We're asking you guys to participate. I'm so curious which one you guys think is the best. We made 5 different ads. They're airing right now in Cleveland. You could help air them, by the way, at helptherebellion.com. You go to helptherebellion.com. Every dollar helps us reach a new voter, and this is gonna be a super tight race. This is an epic rematch. So we're gonna show you the 5 right now and ask you to vote at tyt.com/polls. Let's start with Frederick Douglass.
Nina Turner said we should fight for our $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all, and voting rights. But Shontel Brown said we should not fight. We should be civil toward Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, and other opponents of the Democratic agenda. She preferred civility to getting anything done. You're right, that's a terrible idea. Frederick Douglass said, power never concedes without a demand. Send Nina Turner to demand higher wages, universal health care, and voting rights. This time, instead of someone looking out for themselves, let's pick someone who is looking out for us. Send Nina in to demand justice and fight for Cleveland.
All right, so that's choice A. It's called Frederick Douglass on the website, tyt.com/polls. Now, choice B, Charlemagne.
Charlemagne the God is frustrated by politicians, except for one amazing woman. Here's what Charlemagne said about her on The Breakfast Club.
I'm going to donate right now. I don't know why I just don't set up the monthly thing and let them do it.
Well, I think you've been supportive of me. You really have. I feel very much a part of this family. I love you guys.
Who is that? Good news, that's Nina Turner, and she's running right here in Cleveland. Did you know 47% of black folks make less than $15 an hour? Nina is the champion of a $15 minimum wage. She's not going to stop until we raise everyone's wages. Crooked politicians keep telling you why you should not get paid more. Send Nina to Congress to fight for us and get us the raise we all deserve. She is the only one who's earned our trust. Vote for Nina Turner on May 3rd.
By the way, there's also 30-second versions of this running on TV and radio as we speak. Now let's go to dark money.
Okay, you had a feeling the rich and powerful are rigging the system. Guess what? You were right. Chantel Brown said she would support President Biden's agenda, but as soon as she won, she fought against Biden. Why? Because a group called Democratic Majority for Israel gave $2 million to get her elected. They didn't give her all that money for nothing. They don't want Biden's Iran deal. So Chantel fought against the president instead of for him. She took the $2 million and sold you out. Was it worth it, Chantel? Nina Turner won't work for the rich and powerful. She'll work for us. Vote for Nina Turner on May 3rd so you can finally have someone fighting for you.
By the way, if you live in Cleveland, make sure you're voting, make sure your family and friends are voting, but also vote on the poll because here comes option number D, up number D. That's hilarious. Nope.
What did Chantel Brown do to get $15 minimum wage passed? Absolutely nothing. Did it pass? Nope. What did Chantel Brown do to get Medicare for all passed? Absolutely nothing. Did it pass? Nope. What did Chantel Brown do to get voting rights passed? You guessed it. Absolutely nothing. Did it pass? Nope. This time, send in Nina Turner to fight for us.
Okay, and finally, choice E. Remember, helptherebellion.com. Every one of these ads goes to Cleveland. We're gonna run some of these ads 3 times in Cleveland. If we can get you guys to match, there's only $15,000 left to match. I put in $25K. Former head of Justice Democrats, Shortcut Chakrabarti, put in $25K. Head of Rebellion PAC put in Brianna Wu, Total Hero, put in $10K. Okay, so we're the exact opposite of the right wing. We got everything in this. And for us, that is everything we got. So here's choice E.
Nina Turner is trying to double your wages. Other politicians say that's not possible. Nina says, get out of the way. Wouldn't it be amazing if your representative actually fought for you? Send Nina Turner to Congress to double your wages. It's definitely possible if you fight for it. Send Nina Turner to Congress on May 3rd so she can get you higher wages.
Okay, so I open it up to you guys, tyt.com/polls. Intensely curious what you guys think. That's your 5 options. I open it up to John and Francesca as well. Franny, let me start with you.
I mean, I read Jane Mayer's Dark Money as like a summer book. So I think you know which one I like. I love me some Dark Money stuff. Anything with the Friends of Israel PAC and the fact that like they don't want the Iran deal, which is true. And that was like Biden and Obama's signature piece of legislation. That one got me. I like that one a lot. And I'm like, ooh, dark money, outside money versus, Nina Turner. So yeah, definitely on a C. That's C.
All right,
see, I probably could have guessed that that's one you would have picked. I just question whether that hits as hard for as many voters as some of the issues that are focused on the other ads. I like the Charlemagne one, mostly the latter half where they're talking specifically about wage increases, but I like to keep it simple, so I'm gonna go with nope. It's a couple of strong, indisputable points about issues that Chantel Brown has been put in that position specifically not to fight for, and they're pointing that out. I found that to be very strong. I like the pattern of it too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, wonderful. I don't know. I'm not sure, that's why I'm asking. Okay.
Fence setter choose.
Right. But I'll tell you the Charlemagne one, there's another reason for it. Because remember, the millions of dollars she's getting, she's turning into ads, right? So we're fighting back. We're gonna spend a couple $100,000, Rebellion PAC is, okay? And a lot of that is you guys. So you're the cavalry here fighting against a much larger force. They have completely deceptive ads, absolutely swamping Cleveland. So people don't know what to believe because of all of the ads. We have facts, they have the opposite of facts. That's why you put Charlemagne the God in the ad saying, I'd even donate money to Nina Turner. I want to do it monthly. So people go, well, I know him and I trust him. Whereas the other ads, I don't know. I don't know who's telling the truth and who's lying, right? So that's one of the reasons. But I don't want to bias you guys. I love every single one of those ads. I love that we put Frederick Douglass in a political ad. I think nope totally resonates. Double your wages, it's literally true. In Ohio, it's minimum wage right now is $7.25. She could get it to $15 an hour by just putting on political pressure on Biden and the other Democrats, and that would more than double the wages of many people in Cleveland. So there's just, I love them all. I can't wait to see what you guys think. tyt.com/polls. And most importantly, helptherebellion.com, because for every dollar you put in, that is another voter that we reach with the truth instead of the lies that they have. And we could win this race, and if we do, My God, every one of you that put in $5, $27, whatever you put in, you made all the difference if she wins. So let's go do this now. Cavalry charge.
And good job, Dr. Richie.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Great narration there.
Wonderful.
obviously
We had to put it
recognize his
together in a hurry. We had this great voice actor from the last time, but he was busy. We're like, Dr. Richie, you want to help? And he's like, did you say cavalry charge? I'm in. By the way, Dr. Richie also put in money to Nita Turner.
Nice.
So everybody's on board. This is what real progressives look like. We're a family, we stick together. We don't care about Washington and optics and what people think and say, etc. We just actually fight for one another and we win. All right, we gotta go. I love these guys. Make sure you're checking out the Bituation Room, latest addition to our podcasting network. It's fantastic. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Of course, John is, I forgot to say, this is the first time we're doing a show since you won the Webby. #1 in news and media.
Webby today, Tony tomorrow.
Everybody check out
Tony.
Damage Report. Tony, I love it.
Weird choice.
Damage Report and obviously Dragons. Okay, guys, we gotta go. We'll be right back. The stories from next hour are just as unbelievable, including another insanity from Tucker Carlson. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.